Hey YouTube, Geoffrey here, Invest Skogan. I am sitting on the scaffolding of our little project, so you can see what I've been working on for the past few weeks. We've probably got a couple more weeks to go. We had torn out this whole wall and added insulation, then built another wall on top of it and added insulation to that. We've got two new windows in, and we got to put the other windows, those windows, got to put those back. We've got a bunch of finishing work to do, and then get the siding on. But it has been a little bit of an adventure for me, but it's been way more of an adventure for my host dad, who's been working on this basically full time for several weeks now, and I think a few months. He does have a part time job as well that's helping support the family, but his wife also has a part time job. And granted that pay is a little better here in Norway than it is in the US, they still have to get creative in such ways like employing woofers who work more or less for free. And you can see we've got this tube here is going to connect to a rainwater collector on the roof. And they've got a bunch of other methods for keeping costs down. And every time that we've gone to the hardware store recently, I've talked with Tore about how much he's saving with some creative ways of getting discounts. And yeah, the way I think of it is just like, yeah, he's saving a lot on those discounts and not paying labor to do this, but it's costing a lot in such a way. And he just thinks that's worth it, that he would rather work full time doing this. He's worked in carpentry before, he likes it, that's how he knows how to do this stuff, rather than going out and getting a job that could afford to pay someone else to do this. It also means that he and his wife get to be home most of the time. And when you've got four kids, that's really valuable. And I'm going on this track because I was listening to a podcast earlier and they were talking about energy efficiency and gains in energy efficiency, and how we tend to use more even though we're getting more efficient. And that's called the rebound effect. That if you see some technology in the market get more efficient over a certain number of years, you find that people just end up using more of that energy. Not more than they started with, but more than they would otherwise. And it sounded like from the data that's about 30%. So, for example, if cars on average got 10% more efficient over the decade, then you would see about a 7% reduction in energy from your average car, which is cool because that means the overall energy use is going down, which is something that's totally necessary if we're going to hit any kind of sustainability goals. But it also means that people are driving more. And I would hope that when people are driving more, that means that they're going places that they want to go, that they might not have otherwise gone if it had cost more. But of course, that's just an assumption. And how do we actually measure that? I suppose a lot of people have used GDP to kind of measure how well the economy is doing, how well people are doing. I mean, it's just the sum of how much everyone is making. So if the GDP is going up, that means people are making more, which is great. Except if you dig into GDP per capita, it might just be that there were more people and people are actually making less on average. And then if you actually break it down by who made those gains, it could be just that the top 10% made more and everyone else pretty much stayed the same, which, by the way, is exactly what happened in the US following the recession. But even that might not tell you all the whole story. That from the research I've seen, it seems like once you get to a point that you can make ends meet and you're not worried about where your next meal's coming from or how you're going to pay the bills at the end of the month, basically no correlation between life satisfaction and increased income. So, are we actually doing better if the GDP is increasing? Are we happier if we're making more money? And it won't take long to find lots of gurus out there who are going to tell you that maybe chasing the riches ain't all it's cracked up to be. And I think a lot of people who have gotten there will say the same thing. But kind of the point here was, how do we actually measure if we're doing better? how do we actually measure if these energy efficiency gains are having a positive impact? Yes, we want to decrease emissions, we want to decrease energy use, but do we want that to come at the cost of people's happiness? At the cost of people's well-being? I don't think we do. But how would we know? How would we measure that? People have posited things like gross national happiness or the development index. Those seem to be rather unsatisfying. So I suppose it might just come down to personal decisions. That, are you happier now that you have more money? If you have more money, are you happier with more stuff? If you are, how much would you value that stuff? How much would you pay to keep it? How much would you pay to have more? And not just in terms of money, but in terms of your time, in terms of your life. And would that value change if you got used to living without it for a little while? I guess that's the whole minimalist argument. Lots of open-ended questions here, and I'll try to dig into some of them in the future. Talk soon.